Hello and welcome. I'm your host, Neil Howard. Thank you so much for joining us again. In this segment of Health Professional Radio, we're going to be speaking with Dr. Christian Razo. She's joining us here as Postdoctoral Fellow at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation to discuss the findings of a study published in Nature Medicine that aims to clarify the often complex and contradictory health guidance linking certain diets, behaviors, and conditions to illness. Welcome to Health Professional Radio, Dr. Christian Razo. Thank you for joining.
Thank you for having me. It is a pleasure to be here.
Well, tell us a bit about yourself and talk briefly about your role as a fellow at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation.
Yeah, well, I joined the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation, in short, IHME, in 2019. And since then, I've been working on evaluating the evidence around risk factors and specifically cardiovascular diseases. A little bit of my background, I'm dietitian, but I focus on epidemiology and cardiovascular risk factors.
What is IHME's new star rating system?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I'll start with saying what's the burden of proof studies that we conducted and how we end up with a star rating system. So in the burden of proof studies, we try to summarize the magnitude of the effect and the strength of the underlying evidence of around 180 risk outcome pairs, including well-known metabolic risk factors such as high systolic blood pressure and behavioral risk factors like smoking, alcohol consumption, and some diet-related risks. And we conducted this study because there has been extensive research on the links between various risks and health outcomes, such as vegetable consumption and ischemic heart disease, for instance. But findings are often, as you mentioned, inconsistent and sometimes contradictory. So basically, we wanted to provide an objective and comparable measure of the strength of the evidence for a wide range of health risks. In addition to this, one of our main goals was to translate often complex scientific knowledge into practice and policy, and to communicate health risks on the general population using a star rating system that is easy to understand. Risk outcome relationships with compelling evidence score between 3 and 5 stars, whereas cases in which the research evidence is lacking or contradictory score 1 to 2 stars.
Were there any findings that surprised you? And if so, why?
Yeah, it was a little bit shocking to me that only 8 of the 180 risk outcome pairs that were analyzed received the top rating of 5 stars, indicating very strong evidence of association. And on the contrary, more than half of the risk outcome pairs received only 1 or 2 stars. And these risk outcome pairs include red meat and ischemic stroke, for instance, or smoking and asthma.
So what made the results so surprising?
There's been a lot of discussion and guidance around diet to the general population and how red meat specifically increases the risk of several outcomes like cardiovascular diseases and different types of cancer. But we find very little evidence around this association and very weak association in general. It was also surprising that almost all the studies linking risk factors with cardiovascular diseases only measure ischemic heart disease and stroke, but there were not a lot of studies about the risks that are related to other cardiovascular diseases, such as atrial fibrillation, aortic aneurysm, and peripheral arterial disease.
Can you tell us how the study was carried out?
Yeah, so we tried to measure the strength of the evidence by synthesizing the data from published studies. So we conducted several systematic reviews and meta-analyses using a new meta-regression tool developed by our mathematical science team at the Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation. And specifically, we conducted one meta-analysis for each risk outcome pair, trying to avoid as much as possible statistical assumptions and approximations, unlike previous studies of this kind.
Well, doctor, how do you envision physicians using the information from the star rating system, and how do you envision consumers using it as well?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So we believe that this new star rating system can help the general population to determine which health advice to follow and which to ignore. Basically, we would like the population to use this star rating system to make everyday decisions easier. And we also think that this new tool may facilitate the communication of health risks between physicians and dietitians with patients in the day-to-day practice.
Is there anything that you'd like to add for our listeners, and then give us a website where we can learn more?
So we have to have in mind that the research is constantly evolving, and as a result, these ratings may change as more data becomes available. So, and this is specifically true for pairings with low star ratings due to limited or contradictory research. So, future studies may significantly change our understanding of these risk outcome pairs, like specifically for diet. And on the contrary, high star ratings are unlikely to change in the future because the evidence is already very compelling. It's already very strong. We are now working on releasing the results for other risk outcome pairs, such as alcohol, environmental risk factors, high body mass index, and some other dietary risk factors, such as sugar-sweetened beverages.
Well, give us a website where we can learn more.
The complete list of risk outcome pairs that we analyze in the burden of proof study is available at the IHME website, healthdata.org.
Dr. Razo, I appreciate you joining us here on Health Professional Radio. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much for having me.
You've been listening to Health Professional Radio. I'm your host, Neil Howard, in conversation with Dr. Christian Razo. Audio copies of this program are available at hpr.fm and healthprofessionalradio.com.au. You can also subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, listen in, download at Anchor, Spotify, and be sure and subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com, Health Professional Radio.